see cost volume profit relationship. Relationship is a word that we have to keep in mind in the whole study of this topic. Pizza time. You own a pizza restaurant, okay? You have a selling price per pizza of 150. Your ingredient cost 45 per pizza. You decide that these pizzas will be delivered by Rappi because we have a pandemic situation and the cost of that Rappi delivery is 15 pesos per pizza. Question: what is your profit per pizza? The answer is none. If you deducted 150 per pizza minus 45 and minus 15, let me tell you that what you calculated, that 90, is the contribution margin per pizza. Okay? Check this out, contribution margin per pizza. What it's called contribution margin. Remember, margin is something that goes after something. It's what left after something. Okay? So, it contributes, this 90 pesos contributes to pay the chef's salary of 11,000 pesos per month, and it contributes to pay the stand rent that is 7,000 pesos per month. So, what is the basic of the cost volume profit model? Number one, contribution margin concept. This concept is to deduct from sales revenues their variable expenses. Check this out, variable expenses. Remember that in this course, the most important separation is cost related in base of how they behave versus the activity level, okay? So we separate the costs into fixed and variable, okay? No matter if they are administrative expenses, if they're variable, put it in the variable. If it's fixed, put it with the fixed expense, okay? So now we have to switch our mind and instead of classify the cost according to its function, it's not selling expenses or fabric expenses, we have only two separations. Are they variable or are they fixed? That's why we work in the first topic by separating the mixed expenses into its fixed parts and into its variable part, okay? So, contribution margin is used first to cover all fixed expenses, and after you pay all your fixed expenses, you may generate profits. Then, if your contribution margin is lower than your fixed cost, you are in a loss. If your contribution margin is higher than your fixed cost, you are in profit. The unit contribution margin, is if you calculate it in unit, per unit, you may calculate it per unit or you may calculate it as a total, okay? So the unit contribution margin is the selling price per unit minus the variable expenses per unit, as we did it at the pizza. So the variable expenses might be not only production but also operating variable expenses. The thing is that they may vary as much as your activity level increases or decreases. For example, Rappi, the expenses for delivery is not production, right? Cost is a selling expense, but it goes with the contribution margin because it's a variable expenses, right? If you are selling more pizza, you have to pay more delivery services. Then, if your sales are zero, your loss will be equal to your fixed expenses. And per each unit sold, after this point, the loss will be the amount of one unit contribution margin, okay? The loss will decrease by the amount of one unit contribution margin. When break-even point is reached, break-even point is the point when your profit is zero, right? So when you reach your break-even point, profits is the amount of you increase your profits by the amount of one unit. Your profit will increase in 1 unit contribution margin. Let's see it right here in a table, okay? We may calculate contribution margin per unit or as a total, okay? If we are thinking of selling one pizza, your selling price is 150, your variable expenses, we all agree that are the ingredient cost plus the delivery cost, yeah, they added are 60, so our contribution margin per unit is 90. Our fixed cost is, remember, the chef's salary and the stand rent for a total of 18,000. If you are selling zero, your expenses are still there, so your loss will be equal to your fixed costs, remember. But if you are selling one pizza, your operating profit will be your fixed cost minus one contribution margin, okay? So when you are, you may calculate then the contribution margin per unit, or you may calculate your contribution margin as a total, okay? Check this out. If we are selling 300 pizzas a month, what would be our sales? Only multiply 300 units times 150 to reach 45,000. Your variable expenses will be 60, that is 45 plus 15 of the rapid delivery, times 300 units, yeah, for a total variable expense of 18,000. If you diminish this one minus this one, you reach your total contribution margin of 27,000. That amount deducted by the fixed cost, you will reach an operating profit of 9,000. Check this out. If you split this, this is gonna be our new income statement form, yeah? If you split it up to here, the contribution margin, yeah, above this number, everything is variable. And below this number, everything is fixed. Can you see it? And this number is the same contribution margin per unit times 300 units. So everything above this number in total basis is only the per unit computations times 300 units, or the units to be sold. Yet that is really, really helpful. Let's continue. What is the fundamental concept then? The fundamental concept is contribution margin, okay? Contribution margin is deducted from the sales, number one, the variable cost. What remains after the sales minus its variable costs are called the contribution margin. When you impact the contribution margin, the fixed cost, deduct the contribution margin minus the fixed cost, you will reach your operating profits. So this relationship must be really clear for you all the time. Remember, contribution margin is not a profit, okay? It's something that contributes to first pay the fixed cost, and after that generate the operating profit, okay? That is the king of the concepts in this course, not only in this topic, okay? So keep that in mind. That's the source of the Profe David Noel Ramirez Padilla. So what is this volume profit or CVP analysis? This CVP analysis focuses on how profits are affected by 5 key factors. Those key factors are selling prices. Imagine that, selling prices. If I increased my selling price, what would it be? If I increase my selling prices, maybe my sales will decrease, or maybe I will have more profits per unit. But if the volume is impact, I don't know if that is a good decision. What prices to charge? Lower price will boost sales volume. What marketing strategy to use? Marketing always want more money for advertising. Yeah. And what is the cost structure to implement? I mean, for efficiency. So if the cost is the issue, you have to focus on unit variable cost or total fixed cost, how you may manage this. And if your issue is selling, yeah, I think those, all of them are related. You have to focus on if a selling price could be a good idea in a lower basis or a higher basis, or maybe a higher cost of marketing could be a good idea. Okay, this is a model. Remember that a model simulates reality. So it's good for making decisions, but it's a model anyway. And this model runs into assumptions. Okay, the first assumption is that the selling price is constant. You will not have any change if you buy a high volume. Yeah, the selling price will be constant. Number two, the costs are linear and could be accurately divided into variable and fixed elements. When you are talking about multi-product companies, the sales mix is constant, right? Remember, we will work with not always in a company with a single product, okay? I mean, if you have a restaurant and you're selling pizza, maybe you are also selling pasta, let's say, paninis. So if you have a multi-product, the sales mix will be constant. I mean, which percentage of your sales is paninis, or what percentage of your sales are pizza, and that sales mix will be constant for applying this model. In manufacturing companies, inventories do not change. This is really, really important. The number of units produced equals the number of units sold. So those are the four assumptions for using this cost volume profits analysis. This is pretty useful for one thing, the break-even point. The break-even point is the level of sales at which your profit is zero. So you have always to keep that number in your mind because you have to work for being always above that number, okay? So if your contribution margin is equals to your fixed cost, you are on break-even. Once the break-even point is reached, the net operating income will increase by 1 unit contribution margin for each additional unit sold. That number, that calculation helps you a lot when you are separating fixed and variable cost. This is how it looks, the break-even point in a graphic form, right? You have, if you are selling units here in the axis of the X, yeah, you will see that as more units you are selling, yeah, you are passing from a loss, yeah, to profit because in here you have this fixed cost to be absorbed, right? So when you are selling zero, your loss will be equals to your fixed cost. And after reaching the break-even point, that is right here, here in your break-even point, your total cost are equals to your sales, right? And your contribution margin is equals to your fixed cost. Yeah. Beyond this point, you will start generating profits, and this graph is really, really helpful for you. In equation form, check this out. If the profit equals to sales minus variable expenses minus fixed expenses, and sales are equals to selling price per unit times quantity sold, yeah, that is, this is opening is into per unit times unit sold, and let's call quantity sold by using the Q, right? And then your variable expenses will be split as well on variable expenses per unit times the same Q, that is quantity sold, so V times Q. Then the profit will be price times Q, that is the quantity sold, minus variable expense per unit times Q, that is again quantity sold, minus fixed expenses. Then, if unit contribution margin is price minus variable expenses, you may summarize this as if the unit contribution margin times Q minus fixed expenses equals to profit, and that profit could be zero, then the unit contribution margin times the Q, that is the units sold, equals to fixed expenses. If you isolate this Q for knowing how many units should I sell for being in break-even, I only have to move this unit contribution margin to the denominator right here, right? Only right here, to reach the equation, the simple equation of for being in break-even point in units, The units to be sold will be equals to fixed expenses divided by the unit contribution margin. Let's test it. In our pizza time exercise, the break-even point in units is the unit contribution margin that we already calculated, that is 90 per pizza, 90 pesos per pizza. Our fixed costs are 18,000 pesos. There are adding the chef's salary plus the rent of the facilities of the pizza stand, okay? If we divide 18,000 by 90, this is 90 per pizza, and this is money, yeah? So you will see that 200 pizzas will be enough for being in break-even, yeah? If that's true, this 150 times 200 leads you to 30,000 pesos. The variable expenses that are those 60 per unit times 200 units, sorry. It's 12,000. Yeah, it's 12,000 pesos. So the contribution margin is 18,000 pesos. That your contribution margin, remember, is equals to your fixed cost, then your operating profit is zero. But they are telling us that when you are reaching the break-even point and you decide to sell one more pizza, the impact in the operating profit equals to one contribution margin per unit. So if we are talking of 201 pizza, this will increase 150, this will increase on 60 for having a total contribution margin additional 90 pesos. The fixed cost remains the same, right? This is the behavior of the fixed cost. You won't pay more rent or you won't pay more salary to a chef if you are selling an additional pizza. So the operating profit will be 90 instead of 0, right? So if you decide to sell an additional one more pizza, it will be 90 times 2, and you may continue in that way, okay? This will be also explained as a ratio, right? As a percentage. The contribution margin as a percentage of sales is referred to as the contribution margin ratio. This is computed only by dividing the contribution margin by the sales. If you decided to compute it in total, right, total basis. On a per unit basis is the unit contribution margin divided by the unit selling price. Remember, those are related. The difference between this one and this one and this one and this one is only the units sold, right? As a percentage, no matter if you compute it right here or you compute it right here, the percentage will be exactly the same. In our pizza time, the unit contribution margin is 90 pesos, sorry. The price per pizza is 150. Then if I divide 90 pesos by 150, we will see that our contribution margin is 60 or 0.60 or 60%. What means that our structure of cost is, if our selling price is 100%, our variable expenses rate is 40% and our contribution margin is 60%. What is the use of this contribution margin ratio? The impact on the net operating income of any given dollar change in total sales can be computed only by simply applying the contribution margin ratio to the dollar change. In our example, every dollar rise on sales will increase the operating income in 60%. So the profit relationship is the contribution margin ratio times sales minus fixed expenses will lead you to the profit. This is really, really useful, especially for quick calculations. In our pizza time exercise, the break-even point in sales, I mean money, no units, money of sales, we will have our fixed cost divided by our our contribution margin ratio, yeah, for having the equation as this way. 18,000 pesos divided by 0.60, we will see that in 30,000 pesos of sales a month, we will be in break-even. And we already knew it. If we see our calculation, we calculated 200 pizzas. 200 pizzas times 150 is the 30,000, right? So no more testing. We already know that in 30,000 we reach an operating profit of 0. What if I add one more pizza? If you are adding one more pizza, you are adding 150 pesos more to the sales. What the rules of this relationship said that if you are increasing 1 peso, the contribution margin will increase in 60% because this 60% is our contribution margin ratio. So 150 times 60%, it's 90. That 90 is the impact of selling 150 pesos more in sales, right? So, are we working all the time on generating break-even points? No. We are working, remember, on planning, especially on planning. And for planning, we will think on what will be our target profit our next year. So this is pretty useful when we are aiming to want profit for the next year. So this is an analysis that we call the target profit analysis, and we estimate what sales volume is needed to achieve a specific target profit. Using the formulas, you will see that for attaining a target profit, in units, you may calculate it using the unit contribution margin. And in money, you will get it by using the contribution margin ratio, okay? What would we do? If we go back to the equation, you will see that what you need to cover your numerator is your denominator. If you want to generate your fixed expenses with the unit contribution margin, you will be in break-even. So why don't we add the target profit to our fixed expenses? If we added our target profit and our fixed expenses, we will ask how many units we need by generating this contribution margin for paying the fixed expenses, and after paying the fixed expenses, generate a target profit. So this is an units to be sold for attain this target profit, and this is gonna be money, how many sales in dollars, pesos, rupees, or whatever you want, you need for attaining this target profit. Important. If you don't have a single product, that most of the companies do not work with a single product, the break-even analysis is a little bit more complex, but it's not impossible because you have different prices, different variable costs, and of course, different contribution margins. The term sales mix refers, I told you before, to the relative proportion in which a company products are sold. So we will need that sales mix in order to use a combination of contribution margins for attaining profits and do all our calculations of break-even and profit planning, and you will see. The idea is to achieve the combination or mix that will yield the greatest amount of profits. That is our objective.